If you're a developer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It feels like it happened overnight. AI coding assistants went from being this kind of frustrating gimmick to an absolutely essential part of the workflow. So what happened? What was the big breakthrough that made them so good, so fast?
Seriously, think about it. Just a little while ago, the whole idea of an autonomous coding agent was, well, it was mostly a headache. You'd spend more time fixing what it broke than you saved. But now, it's a completely different world. So, what was the secret sauce? What was the one big idea that finally cracked the code?
And look how fast this all happened. I mean, it is just wild. In 2022, our AI workflow was basically just copying and pasting from a chatbot window. Then we got some basic plugins in our editors, which was cool, but they were just helpers. And then suddenly, boom, late 2023, we have these truly autonomous agents that can take on huge, complex tasks all by themselves. The jump has been absolutely insane.
Okay, so to really get why the new stuff works, we first have to understand why the old stuff was so broken. The first attempts to build these agents were just incredibly complicated, and it turns out that complexity was the real villain of the story.
Here was the core problem. The developers who built these early agents just didn't trust the AI models. They saw the model as this flawed, unpredictable thing that had to be controlled and corrected at every single step. And this led to these incredibly fragile, over-engineered systems that would just shatter at the slightest surprise.
And this is a perfect way to picture it. They were building these things called directed acyclic graphs, or DAGs. But really, you can just think of them as these giant, tangled-up flowcharts with hundreds of different steps and branches, trying to predict every single thing that could possibly go wrong. It was just this web of engineering madness that was a nightmare to build and even worse to fix.
So if adding more and more complexity wasn't the answer, what was? Well, the breakthrough was actually the exact opposite. It was totally counterintuitive. The big idea wasn't about adding more logic, it was about ripping it all out. It was a radical shift to, believe it or not, simplicity.
I mean, just look at this. The difference is almost funny. We went from that tangled web of madness on the left to that simple little loop on the right. That is the entire change. All those hundreds of branching paths got replaced by a single, elegant while loop that just runs over and over again. It's so simple it almost feels wrong, but it's what changed everything.
And this new, simple architecture, it came from a whole new way of thinking, a new philosophy. The goal was no longer to put the AI in a cage and micromanage its every move. The new goal was just to trust it, to actually lean into the model's own ability to explore, to make mistakes, and, this is the important part, to fix its own mistakes.
This one quote right here sums up the entire shift perfectly. Stop trying to build a perfect cage for the model, just give it a good set of tools, tell it what you want, and then just let it work. Get out of the way. Less engineering, more model. That's the whole game now.
Okay, so what does getting out of the way actually look like? How does this super simple engine actually drive the whole process? Let's pop the hood and take a look.
So this is it. This is the heartbeat of the whole operation. The model looks at the goal. It decides to use a tool, maybe to read a file or search the web. The tool runs and gives it a result. And then the model takes that result and feeds it right back into its own brain to decide on the next step. It just does this over and over and over until the job is done. And today's models are smart enough to know when to stop.
Now, this beautifully simple system does have one big enemy: context. You can think of context as the AI's short-term memory. Every time that loop runs, the memory gets a little more cluttered. And just like us, when we're trying to juggle too many things in our head, the model starts to get, well, dumber. So keeping that memory clean is a constant battle.
So the loop itself is incredibly simple. The real magic then comes from the tools that the loop has access to. The agent gets this kind of digital Swiss Army knife, not with 100 tiny tools, but with a small handful of really powerful, really versatile ones.
And what's cool is these tools are basically what a human developer would do. It uses grep to search for text, kind of like hitting Command F. It uses edit to make tiny, precise changes, a diff, instead of rewriting a whole file from scratch, which is way more efficient. They're all simple, human-like actions. But there is one tool on this list that is an absolute superstar.
And that tool is Bash. Honestly, you could probably throw away almost all the other tools and just keep Bash. It is the absolute undisputed champion. It's the core of why this whole new way of thinking works so well.
So why Bash? What's so special about it? Well, for one, it's a universal adapter. It can do pretty much anything you can do in a terminal. But here's the real secret. There is a gigantic, astronomical amount of training data out there on how we humans use Bash. The model is an expert in Bash because it's seen us use it millions of times in tutorials and forums and open source code. It's the language we both speak fluently.
So this big idea, a simple loop plus powerful tools, has totally unlocked a new phase for AI coders. But what's really interesting is that not everyone is using this idea in the exact same way. We're starting to see different flavors of these agents pop up, each with its own strategy.
The source material I was reading had this brilliant analogy for it. They called it the AI therapist problem. Think about it. If you need a therapist, there isn't one single best one in the world, right? There are all these different approaches, CBT, meditation, psychoanalysis, for different people and different problems. It's the exact same thing with AI coders now. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. And this table gives you a little taste of that diversity. You've got Claude Code, which is all about making the experience simple and friendly. Then you have something like Cursor, which is obsessed with raw speed and being perfectly integrated into your code editor. And then you have SourceGraph, doing something totally different. They're trying to build entire code bases that are specifically designed to be easy for AIs to work with. It's the same core idea, but with all these different, fascinating spins on it.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway. If there's one single lesson from this whole revolution in AI coding, it's this. The future isn't about building bigger, more complicated cages to control the AI. It's about empowering it. It's about trusting it to explore and letting it figure things out for itself.
Which leaves us with one last, really exciting question to think about. This whole incredible leap forward happened because we made a simple shift. We decided to trust the model a little bit more. So, as these models get better and better and better, what's going to be possible when we can finally trust them completely? That's the question that's going to define everything that comes next. Thanks for tuning in.